Very great pleasure to introduce you to your keynote speaker today, Adrian Pagdin from IIL, the International Institute of Learning. Adrian has 20 plus years of experience as a manager of people and a leader of complex international projects. So I think he's an ideal person to talk to us about the subject that you all voted for, persuasion influencing the power of personal presence. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand you over to your keynote speaker for today, Adrian Pagdin.
Now this is where I try and get my slides up. Ooh. Almost there, folks. This is great. This is really exciting to be here. I got here earlier on, in fact, and I looked at the mood boards, and there was a real air of excitement. In fact, the first thing I saw was a group of project management professionals out there in white T-shirts shouting, "Super project manager," and they were recording themselves. And then I got busted for stealing stationery. It was just a notepad. I've been here before, not in this room. In fact, I haven't really done any talks on the Isle of Dogs before, but I've done this kind of presentation before. And I think we all remember our first experience of doing that, whether it's with a supplier group or to a board of directors or a decision-making for. I remember our first one. And my first one was with the UK Department of Trade and Industry. Back in 2002, I just started doing this consulting thing. And I was approached and asked if I'd like to join a mission going out to Rabat, the capital of Morocco, to talk about developing hotels. They were looking at their tourism and travel industry and how to develop it. Would they go for the high yield, low volume, the high volume, low yield kinds of model? And so I was thrilled. I was absolutely flattered and excited. And of course I said yes. And that was when they told me I had to deliver in French. Now I do speak French. I'm not as fluent as I was back then, but even so, government ministers, the secretary for tourism, and invited people, so I was a bit nervous. I have this fear that I'm going to stand in front of a microphone and my mind's going to go blank. Do you ever get that? Any of you? A couple of nods around the room. Glad I'm not alone on that one. So I took some advice and I consulted with some friends of mine who did this more often than I did. And my friend Miranda, she said, "Adrian, you know your topic. You know, you're passionate about your topic. You know your stuff. What you need to do is to memorize the first 90 seconds of your presentation." That was really great advice, actually. And I got up there, and you memorize the first 90 seconds, and you generally, you know your stuff, and you engage, and people engage with you. As a result of that experience, I've become a great delegate. I've got a huge amount of sympathy for the person that's up here, and I try and maintain eye contact, and I listen to what they're saying, and I nod, and I make appreciative noises. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for sympathy. But it introduces me to a topic that I have an interest in, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about. And it's about the power of personal presence. It's about getting into the room, whether it be in presentations, in coaching sessions, you're trying to negotiate, you're influencing and persuading. And so what I'm interested in talking to you about is presence. So Tom gave me an introduction there, so I'll keep this very brief. I work as a consultant for IIL. My delivery experience is in opening hotels, so I used to work for Holiday Inn, and in delivering client infrastructure networks for MCI WorldCom, and I work in organizational development. As a business advisor, I work across a lot of industries, although pretty much financial services is the main one, and I work in a lot of different countries. I don't have the monopoly on good ideas. But I've met some really amazing people who've got some really amazing things to say. And what I'd like to do is to share some of those with you, which leads me on to why we're here. So hopefully I'll be no more than 30 minutes. And what do I want from you? It's got your attention, hasn't it? What do I want from you? Engage, challenge, and transform. That's a great strapline. They're really important words, aren't they? I think that to be able to transform, we need to be able to challenge. We need to be able to engage. I remember a delegate on a three-day workshop, three-day change workshop that I was running. She was new to change in a room full of really serious change professionals. And right at the beginning, she said, "I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions." And she did. And for 3 days, she would put her hand up and she would say, well, why do you do it that way? Well, because we always do it that way. But why do you do it that way? And she challenged us. And genuinely, that one person being in the room transformed the way in which we thought about some things. So what do I want from you? I want to be part of this whole day about challenging and transforming the way in which we do things. I think that we need to get into the room. We need to be present. We need to be part of what's going on in the business. And as project managers, it's a key skill. It's interesting. Tom talked about change. Things are changing in our industry. I work across a lot of different industries, different organizations. And in 1969, of course, the PMI came together. That's, I suppose, the first time that we had a collection of project managers coming together. And in 1971, they published what we now know as the PM Book, the Project Management Book of Knowledge. And for 40-odd years, we've been developing methodology and control as a way of delivering projects. Now, I don't have a problem with methodology and control. I think they're really important. But this singular focus on methodology and control, I think, has become a problem. And so I'm delighted to tell you that we're in the midst of a climate change. Those poles of methodology and control, they're melting just a little bit. And we all know in this room that project managers are about people, right? I'm right, aren't I? You agree with that? It's about people. And we're starting to see people relying more on leadership and personal skills and negotiation and persuasion. And so I want to share with you some tools, some ideas. I've got this idea of a project manager or a change professional as a mixologist, like a chef in a kitchen. You know, we've got lots of different ingredients, personal skills, soft skills, methodology, tools and techniques that we can apply in different measures to meet the right situation. But all I want to do is to share with you some tools and techniques, some ingredients to add to your repertoire. So what is presence? My daughter, she's 6. She's going to be 7 on Monday. And she comes home from school. Her best friend is called Josie. And Josie's also 7. Josie's in the top group reading and in maths at school. And Nicolette comes home and she says the most amazing things because Josie says so. And she says, Dad, broccoli's bad for you. It'll turn your hair green. I've got a difference of opinion here. But she won't listen to what I'm saying. She's convinced that Josie is right. Josie's got something on Nicolette. I'm not sure what it is. But presence is understood and it's felt and it's experienced through others. It's about laughing at someone's jokes in a room. It's when someone asks a question, you want to answer that question. It's about following. It's about believing and trusting in somebody. Any Arsenal fans in the room? Sorry about the picture. Sorry about that, yeah. These people have all got it. These people have all got it. My mother would say, if they asked you to jump off a cliff, would you do that? Probably not. Probably not. But they've all got presence. In about 370 BC, Aristotle was talking about convincing communication, and he had these things to say. There's a Wikipedia, rather confusing definition of presence there. There was a delegate on a course at the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, and he was a fascinating guy, and he said, well, presence, Adrian, it's about being in the room. It's about being in the here and now. It's being there. And if you can do that, then you're alive to what's going on around you. You're more responsive. The first of my, I suppose the ingredients is congruence. And congruence is a really interesting word. I only learned it about 18 months ago. You probably all knew it already. Congruence. Congruence is the link between what I say and what I actually do. So I was working with an organization that were really interested in how congruent they were. What was the perception of what they did versus how they marketed themselves? And this is important because if you're incongruent, if you're saying you're doing something, but you're doing something completely different, I might not trust you. At least it makes me start to raise some questions. And if I raise those questions, I'm unlikely to follow you. Okay. You're all familiar with the open door policy? Yeah? I learned that at school. At university, they talked about the open door policy. And it's great. Now, how many of you have experienced a manager saying, I operate an open door policy, come in any time you like? Can you show of hands? Yeah, almost all of you. Now, if I do a second show of hands, how many times have you tried that out and not right now, I'm on the phone, not 5 minutes, closing the door in your face. And after the third time, you never really go and try that open door policy again, do you? Being congruent is about doing what you say you will do. And so if you do operate that open door policy, and I'm not going to cast any judgment on whether you should or should not operate an open door policy, you need to maintain it. Otherwise, the next time you make a statement, then the people that are listening to you, they've got a reason not to trust you. Trust is hard to get, isn't it? It's easy to lose. So, point number one, being congruent, no surprises. Be reliable and do what you say you're going to do. My point number two, I love watching people's body language, don't you? How am I doing? What's my body telling you versus what I'm saying? Body language is great. Politicians are good ones to watch, aren't they? There's nothing to fear here. There's nothing. No. We should definitely do this. We deliver. Yes, as project managers, we always deliver on time, and you can trust us. Or we're right behind you. We're right behind you. Body language is great, isn't it? I've got a couple of pictures for you. I put some words in there. If congruence is about doing what you say you will do, then body language is all about supporting what you say you're going to do through your body language. Morabian says that 93% of communication is nonverbal. Do you agree with that? There's that whole thing about the first 30 seconds you make your opinion up about somebody. Although interesting, I read some research recently that said that's now stretched to between 30 seconds and 5 minutes. So I'm not quite sure. I'm stuffed now because you've all made your mind up about me already. So point number two, think about your body language. I'm going to come on to how we do that, but think about how your body language, your eye contact, what you're saying, how you're saying it, reinforces it. You should buy shares in whatever it might be. Empathy's good. Any of you watch TED, the Tell, Explain, Describe, the TV channel? They get great speakers to talk about really interesting subjects. I highly recommend it. It's a phenomenal forum. And in actual fact, back in March, they had a whole forum on empathy for change. It's really interesting. Empathy's great. You know, I'm going to stop there for a moment because you all sat there. It's quite hard, isn't it, sitting there listening to me. We're not conditioned to sit in a room and not move for a moment. So if anyone needs to fidget or move your hands or anything, that's all okay. In actual fact, as project managers, I think that we're not really trained for marathons. We're trained for short sprints. Short bursts of activity followed by a pause. More bursts of activities followed by a pause. Some of you are laughing. Maybe no pauses here? Just, yeah, okay. Just lots of activity. What I'd like you to do is to come on a journey with me. I'm going to tell a story. And I'd like you to try and empathize with this story that I'm going to tell you. And at the end of it, I'm going to ask you to take a leap of faith. It's got you nervous as well again, hasn't it? You've done very well. It's 2002, and you got great A-levels, and so you got entry into a terrific university. And you've done very well at university, and you're being feted at the careers fair at the end. There's some great stands, and they're pouring champagne. It's not even cider. They're pouring champagne, and they want you to come and work for them, and they're promising the earth, and it's a very, very bright future. And so you go and you join this financial services revolution. And for 5 or 6 years, you experience non-stop growth. It is exciting. It's tremendous. You're surrounded by very bright and capable people. In fact, you're part of a revolution. This is taking over the world. Financial services is taking over. There is no question capitalism has won, and you're part of it, and it's very exciting. As a typical day, you get up at 5. At 5:30, your taxi turns up, and it takes you and your Financial Times to work for your 6 a.m. briefing. And you enter this beautiful glass building as a monolith to how successful you and your colleagues are. There's a gym there. There's a restaurant. There's even a masseur. There's a doctor. You don't even have to go home. There are beds there. This is a great place to work. And all around you are clever people doing really clever things, and you feel part of it. You are fueling the engine of growth. Everyone that you know wants to be you. You get invited to loads of parties. 2008. Well, we all know what happened in 2008. Inside the doomsday machine, people weren't asking the right questions. Delinquencies rose above 6%, and the world had a bit of a shock. And this is terrible for you. These are not good days for you, ladies and gents, because not only is the world around you falling apart, you were encouraged to invest all of your options and all of your cash, and your personal portfolio is tanking. You find out that actually you're to blame. You don't get invited to those parties anymore. You stop telling people what you do for a living. Bank bosses have to apologize for doing their jobs, and you understand that 25,000 people are going to lose their jobs in the city of London alone. These are not good days. And then just when things are starting to look better, LIBOR. And so not only are you a fat cat, you're greedy, you're bad, you're dangerous, you're also immoral. So this is a leap of faith. Tell me, can you empathize with an investment banker? Can you understand where they were? Can you step into their shoes? It's a leap of faith. Can you take even a tiny step in their shoes? Can you do that? You see, the reason I ask is, if you can do that, how much easier is it for you to step into the shoes of your business partner, who has got to deal with the promises that someone more senior than him made to the business, and he's putting pressure on you to deliver because he's in a bit of a tight spot? Or to that engineer that's saying it can't be done because he's got technical constraints that you just don't understand? Or to that stakeholder manager who's got 20 different projects that he's sponsoring? Can you step into their shoes? On a lighter note, I think it's important to lighten the tone for a moment. Have any of you read Dale Carnegie's How to Influence and Influence People? A couple of you. Great book. Really simple. He's only got about 7 things to say, but he says it through stories, right? It's a beautiful book. And one of them really sticks in my mind. It's about him and his dog. You remember the story about the dog? There's a park behind his house, and he takes his dog for a walk in the park, and he lets the dog run around in the park. It's a park, right? Dogs are supposed to run free. The dog runs over the crest of a hill, and he runs after the dog, and there in the valley, and the dog is barking, is a mounted policeman. And the dog is barking, small dog, is barking at the mounted policeman, who's looking a bit stern. So Dale goes up and says, "Oh, sorry about that." The policeman says, "Your dog should be on a leash. Your dog should be on a lead at all times. Because if your dog's not on a lead, look, it can harass the other animals. It can harass other people. It can scratch the trees. It can run around. It can do its business anywhere in the park. So this is not acceptable." And Dale says, "Oh, I'm very sorry. I'll make sure, sir, that the dog is on a lead next time. And in fact, every time going forwards." A couple of days later, clearly, the dog is off the lead again. It's a park. Dogs run around free, over the crest of a hill, bark, 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 runs after the dog. Guess who's in the valley? It's a mounted policeman. But not just any mounted policeman, it's the same one. So Dale runs down and he says, "I know. My dog should be on a lead." And you're absolutely right. The dog could chase other animals. It could harass other animals. It could damage the nature. And you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I should have the dog on a lead. And the mounted policeman looks at him and he says, "There are more guidelines than rules. Just look after the dog." Empathy is really powerful because, you see, people like themselves, don't they? And if you can step into someone else's shoes, then it's much easier for them to step into your shoes. Now, none of this is a panacea. Unfortunately, there's no great pill for you to take to make your negotiations, your discussions, your presentations easier. But one thing I can promise, if you can get some of these things right, is that they're an introduction to meaningful conversations. And through meaningful conversations, we can generally bring about some transformation and change. Now, on to the more difficult point, the most difficult point, how to be present in the room. Remember I said about that earlier, this guy I met at the BIS? How can you be present? How can you be right here, right now? Because even now, as engaging as I am, some of you are thinking about your emails. You're thinking about that to-do list. You're thinking about the coffee outside and you wish you'd perhaps got a little bit more in your cup. I've got to compete with all of these things. A delegate of mine was on a 5-day PMP course not long ago, and she came up to me on the first day and she said, I'd like to have tomorrow morning off. So, okay, any reason why? She said, yes, the Dalai Lama is speaking in London. Now, I can't compete with the Dalai Lama. And I said, you should go. But generally, I thought, fascinating, you should go. But, come back and tell me about it. And she came back and she told me about having seen the Dalai Lama in Central Park in New York. He visited New York in 1996 and he spoke to 40,000 people. It's like a rock star. 40,000 people. And do you know what people say? I mean, I think I've been to a few concerts. If I'm part of a 40,000 person audience, how big's the Dalai Lama going to be? He's going to be tiny, right? I can't even see. He's such a long way away. But he was able to project such presence that everyone felt touched and moved and engaged by this man. I think that's amazing. How does he prepare for those speeches? That's quite interesting. Now, do you know who this is? Steve Ballmer. Has anyone seen this video? Yeah, a few of you. Monkey Boy, definitely worth viewing. And we don't have time to do it right now, perhaps later on YouTube. And he's possibly as famous for his antics on stage as he is for his business acumen. And in this particular video, he comes on stage to a Gloria Stefan song and he jumps around the stage and he's jumping up. Oh, he's a big guy. And he's jumping and he gets to the lectern stand all out of breath and he says, I've got 4 words for you. I love this company. And the audience go wild. They really do. They go wild. How does he prepare for these things? I've experienced this, actually. I went to a leadership development conference. Must have been 10 years ago. It was a room smaller than this, perhaps a bit longer, a bit thinner. It was tables laid out in a kind of classroom style. And so I sat close enough to the door to be able to escape if it was really dull, but close enough to the front to be engaged. You people here, you've got the right idea. And I was sat there, and a disembodied voice came on and said, ladies and gentlemen, your speaker is Doug Hewlett. Doug enters from the side of the stage like a ballerina. He launches himself and he says, hi, I'm here. How are you all doing? And he paused. Now, I found myself back in my chair, physically repelled. It was an involuntary action. Back in my chair, big wide eyes. I looked around and the audience had been polarized. Half of the people were back in their chairs. But amazingly, another half of the people were, they were really engaged in it. He held this pose for a couple of moments, and he dropped his hands. And he stepped to the microphone and he smiled and he said, I've got your attention, haven't I? He said, I want to talk to you about how to engage with people. And his talk was all about leadership and leading teams. And he talked about his way of preparing. He said, before I came on stage, I found a quiet room all on my own with a mirror, and I made myself laugh. I made myself laugh because through laughter, there's nothing else that can be in your mind. It clears your mind. It enables you to be really present. If you've ever been to a comedy store, if you've ever been to see a comedian, it's difficult to think about your to-do list or coffee or jobs if you're laughing. So it's quite powerful, really. Still doesn't tell me how Steve Ballmer or the Dalai Lama prepared. But preparing yourself, finding something to center yourself, means that you've got a chance to be present. Some of you, this will happen naturally. Some of you will be really able to just switch it on. But for the rest of you that are like me, here's some ideas. Laughing in the mirror, genuinely, I found this works. I opened a hotel in Stratford in East London back in 2002. I'd just been to this conference, actually, so I thought I'd give this a try. It must have seemed hilarious to anyone walking through the car park, the staff car park, to see me laughing in the rearview mirror of my car. But I would think about something that had happened that previous day or something that happened that morning and make me laugh. Now, I'm still in touch with some of the staff that worked for me back then, and they still relate to the fact that it was a happy place to work. Because every day that I walked in, I was smiling. I was smiling. And it wasn't made up. I'd found something to be smiling about. And that really influenced people around me. So laughing in the mirror, finding something to censor yourself really works. I'm not going to start going into too much detail about Buddhism or shamanism. Could be a bit of a different talk. But there's a lot to learn about meditating and visualizing. NLP talks about this as well. If any of you looked at NLP, as a way of visualizing a positive outcome, gentlemen at the back, visualizing a positive outcome. If you'd have seen me half an hour ago, you'd have seen me pacing around behind the screen there. None of you saw me, did you? Visualizing this positive outcome. And if you visualize a positive outcome, amazing things happen. You know, you visualize how your meeting starts. You visualize how your meeting ends. These things happen. So visualizing is really, really powerful. I had a long-time mentor, a chap called Jeff North. It was a real inspiration to me. And he used to say he could only do 3 coaching sessions a day, or 3 interviews. So why only 3? Because he poured so much of his person into those interventions. He was utterly focused on the other person. He almost became them. He wanted to help them so much to overcome the challenge that they were facing, that everything else was zeroed out. He just focused in. And that's exhausting. And if you do coaching, mentoring in the room, do you know what I'm talking about? You get so involved with what's going on with that person, you want to help them, that you can't help but be there in the moment. The fourth one there, I've got a friend who works for a law firm. He's an amazing negotiator. You've all been in the room with somebody who's got all the answers. They're just there. I'm the kind of guy that 5 minutes later I think, oh, I wish I'd said that. But at the moment it's gone, no, he's got all the answers. It's amazing. He's just there and he's got the answers. He's a terrific negotiator. And I said to him, well, how do you do that? He said, well, I love it. I really love the negotiation. I feel more alive when I'm negotiating than I do at any other time. Now, unfortunately, we can't all have that gene. We can't all love negotiation that much. But we can find something that we're all passionate about. If we can get passionate about delivery, about change, about transformation, about working with our business partners, about genuinely delivering change, we can be passionate about it. And let me tell you something. If any of you in here have got a fascination about paperclips, I'm your man. It's not that I've got anything about paperclips, but I find people that are passionate about a topic unbelievably attractive. It's just something about their passion, their belief, the fact that they love it. It's irresistible. And so finding something that you're passionate about means that other person can relate and link onto that. We're coming to the end of my time. How am I doing? Actually, doing pretty well. We're coming to the end of my time. Being present is about being in the room. If project management is at the crossroads, if we're being part of a revolution, then we need to be more present. We need to be able to influence people, to negotiate well with people. We need to be able to step into other people's shoes. And we need to find a way of accessing that when we need to do it and to do it well. Okay, so in conclusion, no surprises. Do what you say you're going to do. Think about your body language. It's hard to be consistent. Perhaps a closed-door policy means at least you can hide for a couple of minutes. Reinforce your intent with your body language. Step into someone else's shoes and be in the room. And I've just got one thing to leave you with, really. I think often we get hung up with trying to be interesting by talking. And if I asked you to cite one of the most interesting people that you knew, I think if you made a list of the top 3, you'd find that one, if not all of them, were people that were interested in you. They're the ones that say very little, but they ask a lot of questions. So being the most interesting person is often being the most interested person. Thank you for your time.